Good evening, everyone. This is Vishal, and welcome back again to our Insiders Insight series. We are again back with another episode on pursuing masters in clinical psychology. Specifically, we will be talking today with Pragya Lodha ji about pursuing masters in clinical psychology from MANIBEN College, and we will be trying to understand about the various aspects of studying this particular course in psychology from the particular institute and about the admission process and all the questions that you have. So you can put all the questions that you might have related to the session or later on in the chat. I'll take up the questions one by one as we usually do. So without any delay, I'll introduce the resource person for today. Her name is Pragya Lodha. She has done her bachelor's degree in psychology from Sophia College for Women, her master's degree in clinical psychology from Maniben Nanavati Women's College. She has a lot of experience and she has worked with various national and international organizations. So she has experience working with the Mountains Foundation as a fellow, with Safe City, with Earth 5R, with Samaritans Mumbai, and as an assistant professor with Srimati Nathibai Damodar, Thakurse Women's University. And she's a certified trainer from QPR Institute, a member of State Council of Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, a co-team member of RA, project coordinator at Make Room India, and she has also been a program director at the Minds Foundation, a guest lecturer at SIES College of Management Studies, and she has worked as a clinical psychologist, as a mentor, as a community member, as a member of different societies, researcher, publisher. So, by the introduction, you must be realizing that how much experience and knowledge she holds. So, I'm sure you can learn a lot from her and you can ask a lot of questions. So, please feel free to put your all questions in the comments and I'll take them up one by one. Though time won't allow all the questions, but we'll try that maximum of the questions can be answered and addressed. All right. So without any delay, uh, Pragya ji, a very warm welcome to our channel and Insiders Inside series.
Thank you, Vishal.
I hope you are doing good and everyone is well and safe around you.
Yes, I'm doing absolutely well and fine. I hope the same for you and all our viewers also.
So, definitely. So Pragya ji, from the comments and the questions of the viewers, and because we had posted about the session a while ago, so we have collated a few questions, and the first question we would like to address is regarding the masters in clinical psychology. So, um, before because you have done it from the Manibin Nanavati College, could you please help us understand uh, about your experience, how it was, and what you liked about it? Yes.
Certainly. Uh, I think I've had a wonderful experience at Manibel Nanavati Women's College, not only as a student, but I think I've also had the privilege to be an assistant professor for postgraduate psychology at my college alumnus also. So, studying at Maniben Nanavati Women's College, and I think I should maybe make this clear to our viewers that Maniben Nanavati Women's College, or MNWC, is basically a sister concern under the SNDT University. So, SNDT University is the larger university which has a lot of branched sister concern colleges all over Bombay, and Maniben Nanavati Women's College, stationed at Balaparle West, is one of them. So, experience of being a student, of course, was very pleasant, because I think I did not just have like a good team of professionals, professors teaching over there. But I think something that I absolutely loved as part of my master's program was I think voluntarily I got a lot of time to spend in the library. It was really nice that the library was uh, quite up to date to help me with, like resources as and when I had to, within and beyond the syllabus of the academic syllabus. And the second thing that I really liked was the kind of practicum exposure I got as a result of being at Nanavati. I mean, it was not just us attending lectures, but we also had a lot of guest lecturers come to college and address a lot of topics, which I think gave us a lot of perspective. It brought in a lot of co curriculum. Um, Based learning. It was beyond the academia of what the syllabi usually restricts us as master's students. And another component I think within the same is also that the kind of exposure that I got in with my hospital work. So I think Nanavati is one of those few colleges that actually also associates with a couple of municipal hospitals for our practicum portion of the MA syllabus, which was, I think, extremely helpful, and I think one of the most interesting and engaging aspects of the master's program. So I think, yeah.
Ji. So, Pragya ji, what is the procedure for a student to get admission to a particular college? Ji.
At Manibin Nanavati, well, of course, like the best way to get in touch is to always look at the website where you can get an information of when are the college forms on, what kind of administrative sort of updates that the college will usually, like, sort of have for the students. um, in my understanding, at least till 2019 is what I'm aware of. I'm not sure if things have changed in the last 2 years, but reaching the college and a physical form filling is something which is usually the process. I'm not again sure, but I think there is also an online component, but I think admission forms are largely physical, right? But information is updated on the website. So getting in touch with the college office is the best thing. The college office is helpful. It does allow for I mean, all sorts of help to students is given in terms of, like whatever information they're looking for in terms of admissions or any office related information that students may want. The help desk is friendly enough to update students on the same.
So, Pragya ji, is there any entrance exam or interview process for the admission, or is it done on the basis of merits?
No, I think admission process is completely based on merit. In some cases, especially, there may be an interview that is held. For example, if there is somebody who's sort of missed a year or has had a gap year in between, then probably there will, sort of be an interview. Most of the times, there is some sort of interaction that does happen between the potential students as well as the teachers, because in the whole selection criteria, sometimes we may want to consider a particular student for some sort of you know um, I think if there is a disability accommodation or there is any sort of special case that the college may want to consider during admission, professors are, like, reachable. So that's the case, but mostly it's merit based as far as admission is concerned.
Ji. So, Pragya ji, because this is particularly in clinical psychology, and a lot of students have this confusion in both other ways. First is um, how a specialization in clinical psychology is different from counseling psychology. If you have anything to share on that, um, or did you feel it was there anything that was particularly specific to the course, or they focused on it? And the
Right.
second thing is, a lot of people also refrain from masters in clinical psychology because they feel that थोड़ा सा restricted हो जाएगा ऐसा भी कुछ कंसर्न उनको सोचना चाहिए या नहीं?
Hmm.
जी।
Okay. I think the latter question is actually interesting, but I'll probably answer that first, and then move on to the difference. So, doing a master's in clinical psychology is usually more holistic as compared to doing a master's in counseling psychology. However, I think, like, in my honest opinion, I have always felt the need that psychologists in our country should be, trained more in a mixed curriculum of counseling and clinical, because in a country like ours where there is so much of treatment gap and there is so much of sort of lack of mental health professionals there, also like lack of awareness where people don't know when do I have to reach a counseling psychologist and when do I have to need a clinic, meet a clinical psychologist. I think systemically having a program where people can get trained in an integrated course, more like an applied course which has components of clinical and counseling both, is helpful. However, I think in my understanding, training in clinical psychology is far more holistic as compared to counseling psychology, especially from the point of view of psychopathology. So, let me explain this more by answering your former question, which asked the difference between clinical and counseling psychology. So, essentially, in clinical psychology, the focus is more on obtaining and arriving at a clinical diagnosis, understanding psychopathology in a far more detailed manner, where we read DSM and ICD 10. Of course, now we have DSM 5TR and ICD 11. So we read our diagnostic manuals, as well as we focus more on clinical psychological testing also. These are components which are usually not present in the curriculum of counseling psychology. Counseling psychology has certain clinical tests, but not all of them, which usually are covered by students of clinical psychology. The advantage that clinical psychologists have, apart from these three extra additions in the training, is that they are also trained in psychotherapy, which even counseling psychologists are. So, the whole idea of having the bifurcation of a counseling psychologist and a clinical psychologist is that a counseling psychologist essentially focuses on psychotherapy. A clinical psychologist usually focuses more on dealing with psychopathology, severe mental disorders, as well as clinical testing, but also engages in psychotherapy. Um, sorry. In general, also, like, another point of difference for like counseling and clinical psychologists when we're looking at especially occupation and place of work is a clinical psychologist can work from, I mean, they largely work either directly with psychiatrists in hospital settings or they have a private practice, but they can also work in multiple other settings like working with the military services, working with schools, working with
जी।
corporates, etc. Versus a counseling psychologist also again can be working in all these setups. The only slight bit of disadvantage comes in is that wherever testing is required, usually counseling psychologists are not able to cover that end,
जी,
which clinical
definitely.
psychologists are able to.
जी. So, building on this only, a short question, Pragya ji, is this that you focused on diagnosis and testing. So, a lot of students ask that we cannot do that after masters, or we can, or do we need a license for that? Because that definitely they need MPhil for that,
Yeah.
to get the license.
Right. So I think something that I would like to clarify is that also according to the Council of India, that is the RCI, you can call yourself a clinical psychologist only once you have an MPhil in clinical psychology. You are an associate clinical psychologist when you have done the diploma program in clinical psychology from an RCI recognized university. However, if you have only done a master's in clinical psychology, you can't call yourself a clinical psychologist, but you can still practice as a clinical psychologist. Of course, another thing in direct answer to what you asked is that if there are certain demands for tests by schools, corporates, employees, sometimes also from the court. This is when an RCI recognized psychologist becomes important and mandatory, because wherever there are the legality angle involved, like for example, it has to be covered by an insurance, or it has to be testified for a court hearing, or it has to be submitted in a school for a disability certificate, this is where RCI license becomes important. Um, if you are someone who does not have an RCI license, then of course it's mandatory that you be working under someone who has an RCI license, or you work with maybe a psychiatrist, a senior psychiatrist who's able to sort of supervise and mentor you. So I think this is something which is usually, I think, an air of confusion amongst a lot of students and young professionals, that if I don't have an RCI, can I not practice as a psychologist? The answer is not. I mean, technically, no. I mean, yes, you can practice, but yes, it comes with certain these uh, nuances which I just mentioned.
Well, definitely, they can try to work under supervision and more licensed professionals if they don't have.
I think the
So,
challenge also is, Vishal, that the RCI number of RCI recognized institutes have only grown now. It was technically very difficult for every student passing or taking MA in clinical psychology, because there were very few number of institutes earlier in very stipulated selected cities of the country, which makes it far less inaccessible for students to be able to have that license with them also. So I mean, something that, like I have also like raised as a matter of concern in various of my webinars, along with couple of white papers that have been done surrounding this topic, is that this is more of a systemic error. It's, I don't think the burden of responsibility lies on the student over here largely, because in a country like ours, where there is also so much of treatment gap, and of course, like, if we compare only the last 5 to 7 years with the number of psychology students we used to see then versus what we see now, the numbers have increased drastically, which means that the system also needs to make certain kinds of provisions where students are able to receive that license very easily. Right. So if the demand of the state is to have licensed psychologists, the state has to do something to make that license also, easily accessible to the students.
definitely, Pragya ji, and thank you for sharing that. And I feel personally that state is doing nothing. Still, we have around 35, mostly around 35 colleges for MPhil clinical psychology, which amounts to on around 350 seats on average basis, and that is nothing. That is negligible actually. So totally.
Absolutely, Vishal. Absolutely. And I think there's a huge gap over here, which I think needs a lot of redressal. And also, I think by not commenting a lot more, I would also like to definitely mention that since this is out there in the public, I hope it reaches someone in, responsible authority, that the thing is that also I think the whole system of the licensing also needs a lot of rigorous changes. We need to be far more timely updated, along with the need of the hour as well. So I hope that someday we can see that very soon too.
Definitely, it has been told that you should have the license, you should have the training, but you should also provide the space to actualize that. So, Pragya ji, next question is that how's the experience of dissertation if there is in the program, specifically to the program that Masters in Clinical Psychology at MANIBEN College?
I mean, certainly promising. Every student is assigned a guide, and there is a whole process of, discussing with the guide, right from proposal making to, sort of end of the dissertation writing. There are certain, of course, expectations from students to know research methodology well, and have like at least fundamentals in place, which of course is covered in the syllabus also. But I think, like any other college, guides do play a role in dissertation writing, which the students have to do as a part of the practicum that
Mm.
is part of the course.
Ji. And may I Can we ask what was the topic of your dissertation?
Um, I did my dissertation on internet addiction, depression, anxiety, and stress among Indian youth. So I collected data from about 500 participants across major cities of the country. And very interestingly, I found out that, none of these variables really, sort of had a positive correlation, which allowed me to explore that the model of internet addiction actually needs to be updated, because now we are using the internet for so many various like activities on a day to day basis, that excess use of internet does not always mean that it's internet addiction, right?
Hmm.
So I think it was quite an interesting sort of research
Experience.
project that I got to work on. So yeah, that was my experience with the dissertation.
Ji. So thank you, Prakash. I have a couple of more questions for you. But before that,
Yes.
I would like to take one question from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Shubha wants to ask, what are the job options after completion of MSc Clinical Psychology or MA in Clinical Psychology? So,
Right.
this question is, I think, is relevant to you also because you have done so many work, internships, and
Right.
so with so many organizations you have worked, and I think you would be able to guide students better. But what are the all of the things they can explore? Ji.
Right. Okay. So I think one thing that I definitely want to promise our viewers who are doing MA or MSc in clinical psychology is that we're no more in those times where there is a scarcity of jobs, or we have to think about that, oh, if I'm doing psychology, will I get a job or no? I think we see that there are year-round and day-by-day, job requirements and vacancies for clinical psychologists and psychologists is only increasing. So, if you've done an MSc in psychology or clinical psychology, you have various options. You can have your own private practice, you can work with a psychiatrist, you can work with a school, you can work with hospitals, you can work with NGOs, with organizations, with corporates, you can do teaching. Lots of roles that you can pick up. Like, for example, if somebody does not want to do therapy, you can do testing. If you want to do therapy and testing together, that's also an option. If you want to take part in, for example, being a school counselor, that's also an option. If you want to also be a part of, say, maybe intervention and curriculum designing, which a lot of NGOs and organizations do, that is also something that you can look into. You can also freelance as a consultant on any sort of educative or psychoeducative projects which basically require you to comment as an expert or as a professional as to, for example, if I'm an organization working in children's education, I may want a module on emotional education for children. So, how can you build content on that, the sensitivity of the content? So there is lots and lots of job scope there. And I think something that I always tell students is that identify your area of interest and your area of strength. And, there's an ocean to explore out there. In cities like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, lots and lots of work is happening, so there is no dearth of job opportunities. It's just that, you have, once you are clear with what you want to do, I mean, then it's just about reaching to and, getting that job. So even teaching comes like at undergrad level, school level, post grad level. If you want to take up research, there are so many organizations that actually like do only and only research, also qualitative research, quantitative research, any sort of. And interestingly, I think like the bandwidth for psychology students has increased so much, because now you can also work in, like, you can work with the media, you can work with entertainment, you can work with digital marketing, consumerism, market research. There is a lot of scope. I
The
think it's
whole
interesting that, yeah.
No, no, please continue. Please continue.
Sorry, no. The last thing that I was saying is that all you have to look at is like where can I apply psychology? Because technically, like, sometimes, like, I always tell people that wherever humans are, psychology is going to be there, because at the end of it, we're all dealing with humans, right? No matter what profession we are in. So technically, psychology can exist literally anywhere. All you have to do is just maybe do a little bit of brainstorming and see that what new do you want to do, or if you want to just join hands with organizations or institutes who are already maybe working on ideas that probably interest you.
जी, जी. So Pragya ji, I'm sure that this will be very assuring for the students who gets really scared when it comes to finding internships or jobs.
Yeah.
I, in my experience, students get really scared whenever it comes to now they have to start looking for work. So, can you suggest, because you have done so many things, can you suggest students, uh, what are the places or what kind of things they can actually do? Do you find these opportunities or these internships specifically? Because they are they're worried about internships, so we are trying to tackle that. And
Right. Okay.
uh, the second part that I want to add to the question is specific challenges faced by the students, even if it's not faced, they perceive it that because we are in small villages or small towns, we are not in Delhi, Mumbai, Calcutta, or Bangalore or somewhere like that. So we would have difficulty finding the opportunities here.
Okay. So I think one good thing that has happened post COVID is that so much of stuff is happening online that you don't really need to just be in your town. Like, I think I've probably helped more than 50, anywhere I think between 50 to 70 students last year in different towns, and even small towns, two-tier cities, who have actually had the opportunity to intern with organizations in Delhi and Bombay also, because thanks to the online mode. Nowadays, even there are lots of organizations that conduct internships online also in batches. So that is, something that is sort of always an option, so if you think that you're in a city or in a town where you're not able to reach out for help on ground and in the geographic location, you can always
Mhm.
just go sit behind Google and type and just figure out. The biggest challenge that I get is that I think finding that right place of internship, right? Like, how do I decide that where do I want to intern? One of the best things and the only things that you can rely is that there are two ways how to go about it. If you know professionals, you can connect with them, check with them, take their opinion and ask them that, okay, what do you think is a good place? That's a direct word of mouth. If you don't know professionals, reaching out on LinkedIn is a very, very great space. I think I've had so many number of students reaching out to me, like, in the past so many years, only on LinkedIn. Like, we've not known each other in any space, but somebody just leaves a query and I just send them, a lead ahead. The second way of going about it is that nowadays organizations also take that effort in building the testimonial section of their website. So go see, read
Mhm.
reviews, find out what is there. And one of the only ways, and I think also important in the learning journey, is which I have learned myself, is that sometimes we also need to do work which we don't enjoy to know that this is what I don't want to do for sure. I think a learning attitude is something that really helps us to decide that it doesn't matter whether it's a good experience or it's a not good experience. If it's a good experience, you will take something ahead. If it's a not good experience, you will definitely know what not to take ahead. Right. So I think
जी,
the good and not good is always a part of life. It just comes part and parcel, and we can never decide beforehand. Something might just look great and very promising, but it may not turn out to be that promising as well. But I think this is how we just take a risk, because life is all about taking risks, right? We
जी,
can measure them and moderate them in some ways by talking to people, unknown people, professionals, experts. You can also sometimes just directly email organizations and find out more, get more details. And something that I would say is that just be inquisitive, ask the right questions, take as much detail as you need to make a decision. Sometimes, students also hesitate in asking for details. As a student, as a learner, as somebody who's growing in the field, and as just somebody who's an individual, you have the right to know what you're getting into. Like, for example, if I'm signing up for a course and I feel that the poster or the flyer or the website does not give enough information, I just email the particular person in concern, asking him that, hey, this is what all I need to know to make a decision, like please help me with the details. I mean, there's hardly ever someone who will say that, oh no, we can't tell you or we can't give you these details. So sometimes it's we who have to just make that first step of asking the questions and knowing the details before we make a decision.
Thank you, Pragya ji. I think this answer have addressed a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty in the mind of students. Um, I think definitely what you mentioned is that should a student should focus on is you cannot decide everything before you go and work there or you work with them. So you need to find it and you need to start with it and you will find out whether it's good, bad, or if it's working out for you or not. So
Right.
take this with you. I think you put it really well and I think it will be very helpful for the students. Pragya ji,
I hope
last
so too.
question.
Yes, please.
Ji, last question before we wrap up in respect to your time. So, you, I would like to point out this for the audience that you are actually a very avid researcher and writer, and you teach as well. You have taught as well in the past. So, just to share with us that what you are currently working on, what kind of research papers or researches, and what are your next steps?
Okay, that's usually the toughest question to answer. But
No,
okay,
just to
I think I
share
will
with
keep it
us.
brief. Yes, I will keep
Yeah.
it brief, Vishal. That I think something that I have grown to learn and really enjoy is the fact that ever since I started working post my masters, I was teaching, I was doing private practice, and I was into research also. And that is what really has helped all the three areas of my work extremely a lot, because it's like what I practice I also teach, and I also see that in research. So it's like all the three work areas inform each other and keep me updated. I'm also, I think, instead of being an avid researcher, I would say that I'm an avid reader. My journey in research is very, very nascent. It's very, very young. I'm yet to learn a lot, and I think I still am learning a lot. And having that learner's attitude is something that really helps me keep going without feeling overwhelmed with all the things that I do. Because I mean, there are so many people out there doing so many like amazing things, and there's so much to learn from anyone and everyone. Right from a child to an old adult. So I think this is how I've kept my journey ever since, and this is what helps me the most. um, at present, I think I'm still doing the same. I do my private practice as a psychologist, and I'm a visiting faculty. I don't teach full time anymore because it's a little difficult to sort of manage time that way. And research definitely, I think, goes on. It's a little slower now ever since the workload since COVID, which has not allowed me as much time before. Yeah, and I think something that I never fail to mention in my journey as a student of psychology, and I like to call myself a student of psychology, is that I have truly been blessed with some amazing mentors, and I think that has made such a big difference in my journey. And I owe a lot to them, because had it not been for them, I don't think I would have been this great. Like, of course, I think I had the intelligence and the skill set and the dedication to do well, but I think the learnings that I got from my mentors, who truly taught me how to sort of go ahead, how to manage burnout. I think that is something that I keep mentioning to everyone, that my mentors actually taught me how not to get burnt out right from day one, which has really allowed me to keep my boundaries in place, do all the work that I do, and still stay sane and happy, have the time for my family, and like a personal me time also. So I think
Ji,
I'll leave it at that.
ji. That is so good, Pragya ji. Can you share your interest areas with us? Interest areas of research in research.
Interestingly, that's been,
Currently,
I
if
think, a
anything is
very
going on.
tricky. I think I'll answer both your questions. So I think when it comes to whenever someone asks me that, Pragya, what's your area of interest? Like, what's that one area you love researching? And it's a very, very tough to answer because I think I've done primary research and I've done more of secondary research, which is more of like, like chapter writing and other things. But I've done it across so many topics that I think I'm still sort of struggling to find where my feet are when it comes to that one area. But I've done my maximum work in geriatric mental health when it comes to secondary research, and that's been um, one of the areas that really, really interests me. I've of late been also interested in understanding digital psychotherapy. I'm somebody who's a big fan of traditional face-to-face psychotherapy, but I'm exploring that. I've been practicing digitally for the last 2 years. So understanding the nuances and the future of it, and how can we really promote, traditional psychotherapy in a way that people actually become more forthcoming to approach the same as my area of interest. Existentialism is an area that I haven't done research in, but it's something that I have explored a lot in my practice. I've read avidly about. I've done a couple of courses and trainings here and there also. So I think that's that. And to answer your next question, I think, well, presently we are embarking on a study on eating disorders. We recently published a study on perinatal depression, which was a primary study. The study on eating disorders is something which is yet to sort of come in. And I mean, I keep doing a little bit of writing here and there as and when opportunities come through. So I'm also like working on a paper on student mental health, which should hopefully be out in a couple of months. So I think, yes, this is what my current work is.
Ji, thank you, Pragya ji. This has been wonderful. Any last words or advices you would like to share?
I think one thing that I always tell my students on the last day, is what I will probably say now also, that with two things. I think one is that something that I've practiced and known is that always have the attitude of a learner. It makes the journey of working and learning so much more joyful and burden free both. Secondly, I would say that, just more like a caution that, just because you don't eat the lion, it doesn't mean that the lion will not eat you. So beware, protect yourself, take care of yourself first, no matter what you do. Like, always, like self care, in how they say, for mental health professionals, that self care is an ethical imperative. We don't really have an option. We have to take care of ourselves, because if we don't do that, we challenge our ethical practice of taking care of other people. So yes, and I think COVID has been, in a way, a big reminder of how important self-care is. So I hope we don't stop here, but we keep continuing that practice of taking care of ourselves and protecting ourselves as we grow and come out and in this world of mix of everything. So wishing you all the
Ji,
very best, and I hope you all, sort of take that leap of faith. And I think taking risks in life is important. So, like, ensure that you take care of yourself, ensure that you have your circle, your emotional circle to support you. And yes, I think wishing you all the very best from here on.
ji. Pragya ji, this was wonderful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, insights, and experiences from your journey with us on different topics and career related things. I'm sure that it would inspire us, it would guide us, and it will help us evolve. So, on the behalf of all our viewers, our audience, our Power Within community, and our team, Power Within, I would like to thank you. We are grateful that you take out some time and you could be with us today for the session. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Roshal, and thank you for all the viewers.
All right, so this was today's session. I hope this was related to MANIBEN College, Masters in Clinical Psychology, and SNDT University. So we talked a lot about the master's program, the admission process, and the job prospects after that, and a lot of things. This is for today. Next week we would be coming with another session. You can definitely share your suggestions with us if you would like to focus on some specific areas or some specific career or anything. All right. As usual, you can put all of your questions in the comments, and we would like to get back to you with the answers. Till then, take care, enjoy, have a safe life, and best wishes for your aspirations, your career, and studies.